I was never taught about Islam, never knew what it was until I was around 8 years old. A story that some people may know. As I was going past an Islamic high school of girls, I thought they were nuns, and then I was told by my mother, no, these are Muslims. I was like, oh right, okay. They were, they all wear headscarves like nuns. That's quite interesting. I was angry. I was like, who are these, Muslims? These barbarians who are bombing, New York and killing civilians, because that was what media portrayed. Just thought, right, okay, Muslims bad, which is, I'm sure what the media wanted. So they succeeded in that way. I was into Christianity still at that point, and I would read the Bible daily before I go to bed. I just read a few pages and then I'd pray. I just put my hands together and just do my prayer whilst lying down in bed. That was like a daily ritual. I wouldn't ever miss that. I was fine. I was happy. And then my brother, 3 years older than me, so I think he was maybe 17, 18. He was 18 at this time. He converted to Islam, and I was shocked. I was like, you betrayed our religion, your family, that whole thing, the forefathers. And he had obviously done a lot of research at that point, because you wouldn't just convert for no reason. And he had all the answers ready to use against me. He had his plan from day one. I'm going to convert my little brother, and well, here we are.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another episode of the Arc of Thoughts podcast. In today's episode, I've got a new friend with me, alhamdulillah. Isa, it's really interesting, right? A lot of people say social media is a bad place. Or some people make it out to be like a terrible place. But I think it's fantastic that we can do things like this, where I don't know you and you don't know me. And if it wasn't for social media, I don't think we would have ever met. Right. Well,
yeah, you won't think we would have. That's the whole point, isn't it? Muslim Twitter, as they call it. That's where we all congregate and find each other, especially local brothers, and that's what we've done. Yeah,
alhamdulillah, man. So I think I'm really honoured, alhamdulillah, and the audience are as well, that alhamdulillah you come on the podcast and we can talk about, inshallah, your conversion story as well as some other things around that as well.
Yes.
So Isa, you've made this trip. Alhamdulillah, you've come out to see us. Now, we're going to start off with talking about your conversion story.
Okay.
But just before we do, and before we get into that, I want to talk about the term convert and revert.
Okay, yeah.
So I know that sometimes a lot of people, they get caught up within the terms, and some people make it like a big deal. Now, my personal side of the story, or my personal understanding, is we shouldn't worry too much about the words themselves.
Okay.
Provided that somebody doesn't take offense from them words. For example, if somebody is quite specific and they want to be called a particular, whether they want to be called a convert or a revert, then we honor that and we respect that. But for me, as a person who has grown up in a Muslim family, as for many of the viewers who may be watching as well, I don't think we should get too caught up in the terms or in the terminology. What's your side? So obviously, like, you are yourself a convert or a revert. You're going to tell me which one to call you. But what's your side? What's your understanding of the two words?
So, personally, I prefer the word convert, because I feel like revert could apply to someone who's left the fold of Islam willingly and then rejoined the religion, whereas using the term convert would imply that I was born into a non-Muslim family and then found Islam. I never left the fitrah of my own volition. I was taken away from that by family, and then I've come back to the true path, which is Islam. So I feel both are fine. If you want to call me convert or revert, that's fine. I personally, most of the time, call myself a convert, just to elaborate that I wasn't born into a Muslim family. Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. Like I said, I think some people get a bit caught up in terms of like the terminology and stuff, and I think I personally think that people shouldn't force it.
Of course, yeah.
Let it be how it is.
Yeah, right? As I said, most people would call me a revert. I don't find offence to that. Some people call me a convert. Again, I don't find offence to that. It's one of them. Whatever their preference is.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to kick you off now. And I'm going to let you go ahead and tell us about your story. What was your journey to Islam? How did you come about it?
I'll get some water first.
How did you accept Islam? what were like the major sort of turning points or
Okay.
major sort of incidents that sort of brought you closer towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Okay.
I guess the first point to mention here is obviously you come from a Catholic family, don't you?
Yeah, Roman Catholic. Majority of my family's Irish, and the Irish, they're as Catholic as the Pope. So that's why I was raised as one. Yeah, and then some family members not really into religion, but I spent some years, me and my brother and I, living with our great grandmother. That's our mother's mother's mother, and she was a extremely religious woman. She would go to the church daily, which I know Muslims watching this now might think, oh yeah, I go to the masjid every day, but for Christians that's quite rare to go to the church every day. And she would go there, and she was very spiritual, and she used to drag us along to the church on Sundays, and I think she definitely had a part to play for my brother and I in liking religion and believing in God, although our concept of God was skewed at that point. And living with her, as I said, definitely put us on sort of the right path in terms of religion being important in our lives. And we both went to a Roman Catholic school, so we never, I was never taught about Islam, never knew what it was until I was around 8 years old. A story that some people may know. As I was going past an Islamic high school of girls, I thought they were nuns, and then I was told by my mother, no, these are Muslims. I was like, oh right, okay. They were, they all wear headscarves like nuns. That's quite interesting. I was 8 years old. I didn't really remember much about it after that. I just cracked on with life, and I think the next instance about Muslims really coming to the forefront was 9/11.
Okay.
Now, I was 10 years old at the time, and I still remember where I was when I found out. I was at my nana's house, my dad's mum's house, and I was angry. I was like, who are these, Muslims, these barbarians who are bombing, New York and killing civilians, because that was what media portrayed. And I know that the fallout from that for Muslims, especially like older Muslims, probably ones in their 40s and 50s and 60s. Now, back then for them, it was very hard because they were targeted a lot after that. And I know there's a takeaway down in Aldershot near London where they lost so much business because of it that they, not even now to this day, they can't even put the halal sign on their takeaway. Because I went in there and asked, are you halal? And they said, we are, but we just can't let people know, because if they do, they won't come here. So, that's sort of how much the media portrayed that Islam was bad. And I'd say I got on board to some extent. I didn't have any, I didn't know really any Muslims, so I couldn't do anything about it. Not that I was planning to. But yeah, so I just thought, right, okay, Muslims bad, which is, I'm sure what the media wanted, so that they succeeded in that way. Now, the story changes when I went to high school, and there was a lot of Muslims there. Maybe 30% of the students were Muslim, which, it was fine. I've never had an issue with race. Like, I think my first friend in that high school was a Chinese boy, and I got to know the Muslims. I remember one day I was just drinking some water like this, and an Iraqi guy comes up to me and goes, "Don't drink in front of me. We're fasting. It's Ramadan." I was like, right, and so bit by bit over the next couple of years, I learned about the religion. But then I was also learning that, English people just didn't really care about religion anymore. And why was that? Out of 120 students, say 70 of us were white English. No, I was like one of the only ones who cared about religion, and debates would happen sometimes about religion, and I was only ever the one on the Christian side. The Muslims, mashallah, they always, if they're Iraqi or Pakistani or Libyan, they were always, mashallah, they're ready to, defend Islam, but also live Islam, I remember we playing football on the fields at lunchtime on Fridays, and then like the big like year 11s would come around and like drag the younger kids off to play drummer. And I'm like, where are they taking them? So this is how I slowly learned about it, and there was camaraderie there.
Yeah.
But I was into Christianity still at that point, and I would read the Bible daily. My dad, which is quite funny because he's not a religious person at all, he's at best agnostic. He bought me a Bible book. It was sort of like a children's sort of Bible, which means it's just easier to read. And It's got illustration. He bought me that, and I would read it every day before bed. I'd read a few pages. I just put it under my pillow, and then before I go to bed, I just read a few pages, and then I'd pray, which no wudu, no washing or anything. I just put my hands together and just do my prayer whilst lying down in bed. But that was like a daily ritual. I wouldn't ever miss that. And I was into the Bible's a great book in terms of like just as an entertainment, fictional book, semi-fictional, and I was fine, I was happy. And then my brother, 3 years older than me, so I think he was maybe 17, 18. He was 18 at this time. He converted to Islam, and I was shocked. I was like, you betrayed our religion, your family, that whole thing, the forefathers.
Yeah.
And he had obviously done a lot of research at that point, because you wouldn't just convert for no reason. And he had all the answers ready to use against me. He had his plan from day one. I'm going to convert my little brother, and well, here we are. So he was well studied in everything, because I think for him, doing a slight tangent for his conversion story, he just felt a little bit spiritually void, and went on a bit of a journey. He started, at this point we weren't living with our great gran, and we weren't going to church or anything, because it was boring. He started going to church by himself,
right.
And he just didn't feel it. He felt something was missing, so he went on a bit of a search for religion, and he didn't even look into Islam initially. He looked into Judaism. As a Christian, the natural sort of thing to do would be to look into Judaism, because Christianity was born out of Judaism, so that's the first one you sort of go to. And I think he even looked into Buddhism, because it's known to be quite spiritual, and things like that. One religion that never really stands out for people to look into Hinduism from an Abrahamic faith. It's just too foreign. And then all these like Shinto and Taoism and all that from China. Again, it's not enough for someone from the Abrahamic faith. So I think he eventually, being surrounded by Muslims at school, found Islam, and he sort of thought, wow, this sort of makes sense, and did his research into that and ended up becoming a Muslim. He hid it from the family for quite a long time. Apart from me, he told me straight away.
Right.
Even though it's quite strange, because we weren't the closest of brothers, because we had different interests, things like that. But he told me, and then that's when the debates started happening. So I thought, well, I need to bring him back to the light. But every time, he would just point out the inconsistencies in the Bible and how Islam made more sense. And I tried to ignore him, but then I'd be there reading my Bible at night. Oh yeah, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, that is an inconsistency. And he used to watch a lot of Dr. Zakir Naik, and what was his teacher called again? Ahmed Dida. Yeah. So rahimahullah. So I started watching some of them as well. I think that this is one thing I will give myself credit for. Whenever I learn about something, I don't learn about it from like an Orientalist view, or an agnostic. From the antithesis. I will look at it from their own perspective. So I think when I wanted to learn about Islam, I learned about it from Muslims and not from Christian apologists or anything like that. So slowly but surely I thought, oh yeah, this is starting to make more sense as it goes on. Or maybe not even that Islam made more sense, it was more that Christianity was making less sense to me, and the discrepancy between the Old Testament and the New Testament was just building within me. And I was like, how can I justify the differences between God in the Old Testament and God in the New Testament, and it got to the point where I thought, I can't be a Christian anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I do, I need to create a new sect that believes in one God, and that Jesus is a great man and everything, and but he's not part of God, because it doesn't make sense. And that's when I started learning about the Council of Nicaea and Nestorianism and the story of Salman al-Farisi, Radiallahu anhu, which is one of the greatest stories I've ever known. And it just became evident to me that Christianity had gone down the wrong path. And I thought, right, well, I'll be like my own monotheist, but I'll still use Christianity as sort of a guide, the Ten Commandments and things like that. And but that wasn't enough for me. And maybe I was 17 at this time, and I just thought, you know what? And I prayed. I went into sujood like a Muslim, because it even showed in that Bible I had, the illustration was of Jesus in sujood. So I thought, well, let me do this and pray to God the way Jesus was, and just say, look, you need to guide me here, because I don't know what to do. I don't know, should I become a Muslim? Should I go back to Christianity? Should I start a new form of Christianity, which obviously now I know is Unitarianism Christianity. They believe in God is God, and there's no splitting up, or Trinity is a foreign conception that was man-made. And I did that, and then I went to bed, carried on with my life, and then a few weeks later, I remember waking up just knowing, I had an epiphany, like, you have to become a Muslim. There was no ifs or buts about it. It had to be done. And I wasn't happy about it, because I thought, life's going to change. No more bacon sandwiches. And I'm a big fan of sausage rolls. Right. Alhamdulillah now, mashallah, with Quran and veganism and everything, you can get all that stuff.
I've got to say, like, that entire movement has been like very beneficial for
100%
Muslims in the West.
100%. We can talk about that in a minute, actually, when I get there. So I had converted, but as I said, I knew it was going to be a challenge, and it was. I think I ended up maybe losing more than 50% of my friends. But it was something that had to be done. You can't ignore an epiphany like that. I didn't convert straight away. I was thinking, you know what, I'm only 4 months away from being 18. Because of my family, I'd rather just wait until I'm 18 and then convert. So that was sort of like the plan I set to myself. And then it also gives me a window to research and potentially change my mind. So I just carried on. I think I told a few Muslims from my school. I was in sixth form at this point about it, and they were all so happy. And one of them, who I didn't know that well, he even said to me, and he didn't know, he said, oh, you should become Muslim, And I was like, does he know or something, or can he tell something? But it was quite strange. They were all very happy, and I wasn't already thinking about, which sect should I join or anything like that. Should I become Sunni? Should I become Shia? 99% of the things I was listening to and watching were Sunni orientated, because it's mostly Sunni Dawah that are after the converts and things like that. And there's quite a few Shias who went to my school, and funnily enough, one of them even said to me, all convert to Sunni Islam. And now he's quite strict in his Shia beliefs. So I always found that quite interesting, reflecting back on that. Why did he say that? And I don't know the answer, but I just find it really interesting. I think it's worth mentioning. But it does go to show, have you ever met a white convert who's not a Sunni? It's quite interesting, isn't it? It's food for thought. Now, it got to the point where it was coming up to the end of 2008. I'm still 17, and I thought, why am I not converting now? I'm ready. I'd already trialed Ramadan. I'd already done my own fasting. I did it wrong, because I thought you started at a sunrise, not dawn. So I remember I was just fasting by myself, and I thought, this is quite cool. This is quite easy and stuff. So I thought, I just need to convert now. So I converted just before 2009 on the 31st of December 2008, still at 17. And I didn't want to do what my brother did and hide it, because I felt that just makes things complicated. You just need to bite the bullet and get it over and done with. So I told my family, and they weren't happy, because my dad wanted to take me for a pint for my 18th birthday,
Right.
and again, media has worked for the majority of people in this country about Islam being bad. So it was difficult, but alhamdulillah, as we go on now, I'm in I think my 13th or 14th year as a Muslim, and my family realised the good things that have come about from that. My mum said whenever my brother, before he became Muslim, was out drinking in town, she'd never sleep until he came back home. She never had that issue with me, because by the time I was 18, I was already Muslim. Playing video games in my bedroom, I wouldn't be going out or anything. So she was, she realised these little intricacies, and we're closer now than what we've ever been. My mother and myself, we're on the phone all the time, and we live close by, and I've given her 3 grandchildren that she loves. She always wanted a daughter. She never had a daughter. She's got loads of granddaughters now. She's got like 5 granddaughters. So she's happy, and they see that, and it's just a case of now propagating the religion to them. It's quite difficult to give dawah to parents, because no matter how good you come across, they attribute it to themselves doing a good job of raising you. So it's very difficult to give dawah to parents. It's a very tricky one. You can't just go around and say, become Muslim, this is why, because it just doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
I think this isn't a thing that's just restricted to converts, actually. I think like a lot of people who become more religious than their parents, they have this difficulty as well. How do I
suppose you would,
how do I make my parents more practicing? But I think like one of the things that I always take great benefit from is whenever you hear a lecture or a talk given about the disrespect of one's parents, and one of the things that they always mention is this relationship between a religious child and a parent who maybe is not as strict, or is fulfilling the commandments of the Sharia to an extent of how the child is. And the thing is, they always mention in this sort of relationship, you have to be very careful that you don't disrespect your parents. So maybe it becomes a point where you are making more dua, and you are asking more from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and your effort is, I won't say non-existent, because there needs to be some effort, but it's more with a bit more tact and a bit more wisdom and a bit more
time. Time is one of the most important things, because you can't just rush it. You as I said, 13, 14 years, and I'm still slowly but surely trying to teach my mum about the religion. My dad's even trickier, because he just doesn't like entertaining religion at all. But alhamdulillah, our relationship is very good. I live around the corner from my dad, and my mum a little bit further, but fantastic relationships, alhamdulillah, regardless. And now they both have more of an understanding and a respect for Islam, and they now share that, and that's sort of how tolerance for Islam in this country, or the West in general, spreads by us converts are almost seen as like that bridge sometimes, into the religion, and also into the Western culture.
Well, we make dua first and foremost that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides your parents as well.
I mean, that's the only thing keeping me in the country, to be honest.
Alhamdulillah. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about, Isa, is, so you've talked about your conversion story, but the thing is, it doesn't just end there, right? In terms of
that's the beginning, to be honest. Yeah, definitely.
So what I want to know about also is maybe your first couple of years, because the thing is, you've obviously, before you've converted, you already know about Ramadan. You mentioned that you fasted already. You know about sujood, so I assume that you already know about salah and the injunctions of salah. But the thing is, obviously, we as Muslims who grow up, because of our families, generally in the places that we live, we tend to have some form of schooling system, in some way, shape, or form, where when we are young, we've grown up around religion, and we've been taught about the injunctions and how to perform salah, and basically like cleanliness, wudu, ghusl, these kind of things. We're all taught it. But the thing is that at the start, for somebody who becomes a Muslim, all of this can be really overwhelming, right? So what was your journey? How did you learn? Were there people that maybe really helped in terms of that journey? And then I want to tie that in later on when we come back around in the conversation about, when we talk about how in the UK or in the West in general, how people who are native to this country and how they might become Muslim or what we should be doing. This also forms part of the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Of how should we train people up that become Muslims now.
Okay.
So, like, what was your journey
Right.
first? And then
So
we'll come back to it.
I'm glad you mentioned this actually, because I probably should have mentioned it in the last part, but we can just carry on with that. So my brother obviously is very happy when I've never seen him so happy. Like, I always say to him, "Oh, you're miserable," but he was so happy when I told him I was converting, and I think he thought I was joking at first, just playing around with him, but I was obviously serious. And straight away, there was, alhamdulillah, there was a masjid that had just opened right near our mum's house, a 5-minute walk away, and he knew the imams there. It's only a small masjid, but he took me to see the imam, who was quite young himself. I think at that point he was maybe 26, 27. And he would bring me around to his house to teach me, reading Arabic and teaching me fiqh, the fiqh of wudu and prayer and everything from the book Talim al-Haq, which I'm sure most South Asian people are used to. And Gary Saab from the masjid, he was the one who taught me, and he just taught me, alif ba ta tha, and that would just go on for a few months until I could read. I'll be honest with you, I didn't put in a big effort in terms of the reading initially. It's only the past year or two where I've really, knuckled down about what are you doing. I need, I got too used to Roman transliteration of the Quran because it was easy and I was lazy. And he taught me all the fiqh. So I think within a week I knew how to pray properly. I'd memorized Surah Fatiha and maybe Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad, maybe a couple more after that. And I learned maybe 10 surahs, and I was praying straight away. The five a day. So they just didn't find it that difficult. I'd mentally prepared for it over the past year or so. I think the wudu was one for me. I'm a big believer in the leather socks or waterproof socks, just because it makes life a lot easier than putting your foot in a sink, in a place where you don't want to be putting your foot in a sink. When I found out the ruling of that, I've been wearing waterproof socks for 12 years, maybe not the same pair. So, that was a big help. And you sort of go through it. Some people might struggle. Some people go cold turkey. I've listened to loads of convert stories, and it was like people like Hamza from Hamza's Den. Mashallah, he went from 0 to 100 when he converted. And for me, I gave up alcohol straight away. I wasn't big into it anyway. I didn't do any other like drugs or anything. I gave up the pork. This was and obviously non-halal meat. And this was a challenge in the sense that I didn't know where to get the halal meat. I wasn't driving or anything, and I lived quite close to Old Trafford, which is actually a big population of Muslims. But I wasn't going to walk there. Do you know what I mean? To get halal meat. So corn was getting quite decent back then. It was there wasn't a big amount, but there was a few bits here and there. So I just remember eating these were like fake lamb steaks, corn steaks, and I was just eating them it felt like for decades, but it was maybe a few weeks, and eventually I persuaded my mum to take me to the halal butchers, and we bought loads of burgers, lamb burgers and stuff from halal butchers, and that was fantastic. And then I sort of got into a routine then. Asda that we went to they had a halal section, and I started cooking for myself at that point, because I thought, let my mum worry about my little brother, who's he's a lot younger than us. He's only 13 now, so he was like 1 or 2 at the time. And I'll start cooking for myself, and I started doing that, and I was fine after that. I had my halal food, so I could start replacing the things that I'd missed so much, like sausage rolls with Quorn sausage rolls, bacon for Quorn. I call it faken, Quorn's bacon. And then turkey rashers are now quite popular, so alhamdulillah, I've run the turkey rashers at my house. And then I think music was quite a difficult one, because obviously most Muslims know it's haram, but it's not sort of pushed at the forefront. You won't ever hear like Mufti Menk talking about music being haram. It's something that you sort of learn more when you study into it. So I still listen to music. I think initially I had like the mindset like I was going to struggle to find a wife because I'm white, and generally, Pakistanis can only marry Pakistanis and stuff like that. So I I still maintained an interest in girls because I just wanted. I almost had like this inferiority complex. Like, am I going to be able to attract? Do Pakistani girls like white guys, sort of thing?
Yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah.
so that was one thing that I probably should have, stopped. But it was. I think that was more of a worrying thing that I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if other people have that mindset. But I don't know if that's just unique to me. But I was worried about that. I soon came to realise that that wasn't the case at all. If anything, you actually get quite a lot of women throwing themselves at you. But I wasn't. I think eventually I got to the point where I thought, well, I shouldn't be speaking to women, and I eventually got to the cold turkey stage where it's, I need to find a wife, and alhamdulillah, I think I met a girl through a masjid in Manchester when I was 19. She was 17, and then got to know the family, Somali family, or Barawa, which is it's complicated. It's probably more Yemeni than anything else,
Yeah.
but living in Somalia. And yeah, we got married a year later when I was 20. I think she was 19. She just turned, it was just after her 19th birthday. So yeah, we got married, and that was almost 10 years ago. And alhamdulillah, we've got three children now, and yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of that story. Yeah,
Yeah. It's good to hear, man. I know you've just had a little one at the same time that I've had.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, man. Honestly, hearing these kind of stories, I think one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on, why myself and Kasim, both wanted to have you on, was because these kind of stories are like heartwarming for us Muslims. And the thing is, what it is, I think it gives us like a boost in our faith. Because
I can see why. Yeah.
When somebody who has never been familiar with the religion accepts the religion, accepts Islam, for us it just solidifies us more and just makes us feel more at peace, especially where like we recognize that we are minorities in this country, right? And hopefully that's going to change.
Well, statistics say it is, yeah.
But it definitely provides us with a lot of like, for me at least anyway, it provides me with a lot of firmness in my faith more. So I think inshallah, not just for myself, inshallah the people that watch as well, hopefully they'll get the same benefit as well.
Inshallah.
But from my perspective, the way that I see it is, I think especially in the UK and the West in general, I really do think that those people who grow up in Muslim families do almost have to take on a journey like they are almost a convert as well.
So this is something that I always say, where we might not all be converts here, but sooner or later you leave your parents' house and you have to intentionally decide, I'm going to carry on being a Muslim, I'm going to raise my kids as a Muslim, and no one can avoid that. So in a way, we're all Muslims who've decided to be Muslims. It's not just something that's passed on, really. And we can see the opposing side to that throughout the whole world at the moment. The numbers of Christianity are declining so fast.
So let's move on to the next section now, Isa. So what I want to talk about is, you've already made a mention of this already, actually. So you mentioned that the numbers of those people who are followers of Christianity now seems to be dwindling.
Yeah.
Sorry, not seems to be. They are dwindling, right, quite rapidly. But a lot of them are choosing to go become, like, categorize themselves as irreligious or just not religious.
Yeah.
So the question is that we think and we know that we have a solution to their problems, and you've already mentioned about having, when you read the Bible and between the Old Testament and New Testament, finding discrepancies. And I find there probably is going to be a large amount of people who, there are going to be some people who just don't want to be religious. That's fine. Yeah. But I reckon there is a significant portion of people who are finding these discrepancies, and that's what's taking them away from Christianity.
Yeah.
So the question is that how can we as Muslims sort of divert that attention away from becoming not religious to becoming Muslims? What do you think about that?
So one thing I'd say, and I feel this is something that's not as bad these days as it was back in maybe when I was going high school. But say for example, like Pakistanis going to school will stick with their own group. Somalis going to school will stick with their own group. So they're not really interacting enough with the indigenous, the native population, English people, and befriending them and getting to the point where they can talk about religion and things like that. And you can see the instances where that does happen usually leads to either conversions or to at least better understanding, and people actually thinking, what, there's nothing wrong with that religion. So even though I understand, wanting you, say for example, when we're older, of course I want my daughter to have, my son to have Muslim friends, but it's also, they're beacons of Islam to bring others to the religion. And this is what a lot of the Sahaba did, and if you look at the time of the Prophet ﷺ and after the Prophet ﷺ, so why can't we be doing that now in this country, whether it be at school or ourselves when we're at work? Because there's people out there, there's willing hearts and willing minds who want to know about the religion, and when they find out, we don't know. They may want to convert. The issue is, as you said, most people these days probably are agnostic. I'm not even going to go as far as atheist. It's just they just don't care about religion, and it can be difficult to get them reinterested back in religion again. It's more the ones who are still sort of unsure or willing ears. And again, we all need to just brush up on our knowledge of Islam to be able to defend it, to not even necessarily from a religious aspect, but from like a political aspect. Talk about the greatness of Sharia and the sense it makes, and just how the spirituality. You've got these days people, go into yoga to stay fit, and they think, meditation. Well, we have yoga and meditating in one thing, which is praying. Which, it's essentially the same thing. But, the cleanliness of Muslims is far above, non-Muslims. What people wash up to their elbows 5 times a day. Their feet 5 times a day. Istinja, washing your private parts after you go to the toilet. Coming from someone who wasn't a Muslim, trust me, non-Muslims don't do that thing. A couple might say they do, but it's rare. There's so many avenues to explore. I think for me, I do like the political aspects of, if we look at capitalism these days, is like what's running the world. There's still a couple of communist countries out there or socialist countries. But you look at all the bad things happening because of capitalism. Sharia has the answers there. It is a little bit capitalistic, but it's also got a little bit of socialism. It's got a little bit of all these different ideologies, but it's got a balanced amount. It's the middle path. You look at the amount of people in the West who are just taking money that they can't afford, and then paying interest on that. Islam doesn't do interest, and things like that, to be able to explain that to people, if you can eloquate yourself properly, you can work wonders, and that will affect people who aren't even religious, because you're actually saying, well, even from a political point of view, it makes so much sense. And this is why even like the reason why so many countries at the time of the Umayyads, the amount of people who converted, because they were on board with that. It got to the point where the Christians wanted to convert, and the Muslim rulers were trying to stop them from converting because they wanted the jizya. But it's just because everything made so much sense, and that's what we need to show in this country, and it can be done. We need to be the best in every aspect. And in certain ways, we are showing that. Look at mashallah, the amount of Muslims who go on to be doctors and pharmacists, high-end careers. Look, the school I went to was a grammar school, and mashallah, you could tell the parents care, because like 30-40% of the people there, by the time I was leaving, the first year kids, it was like maybe 50-60% were Muslims, because they want their kids to go on and get a good education, and get those academic careers and be in those places in society where their words do mean more. So that's one way. Again, it's difficult because I think secularism and materialism are just running rampant, and I think they are the big enemies. You know, they are the what comes before Dajjal, I believe. Yeah,
I think like materialism, I think it definitely has its problem, but secularism, where you're basically saying, you know, your religious life and your public life are two separate things. This is like completely incompatible with
France,
Islam. And
France is one we're looking at, which are really pushing that at the moment. But they know that Islam is obviously, it's not just a religion; it is a complete way of life, which brings the political aspects as well, and that's why they are fighting it, because they're scared of it, and they should be. You know, there's over 6 million Muslims in France. It's the biggest Muslim country in Europe, excluding Turkey. You know, in the EU, so it's it's a big population. So, you know, they do fear it, but they need to understand that it is the best way to be. It makes so much sense. It benefits the world. Yeah.
Okay. So, I guess the next thing I want to ask about is then, how can we as Muslims help facilitate those people who are like maybe on the verge of converting to Islam? So you obviously, I think one point that we want to mention here is that obviously the hidayah and the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's in the hands of Allah, right? So like, I mean, I can think of an example where I remember one of my ex-colleagues, so I have a mathematics degree. I don't know if you know this, right? So
I think you mentioned it.
I have a maths and stats background. So I remember when I was working in university, I had a really good friend who was non-Muslim. And at the time, I was taking lessons in usul al-fiqh and fiqh and the derivation of fiqh rulings.
Yes.
So, you know, a lot of that also ties in with like a lot of mathematics as well. So like a lot of inheritance and stuff naturally comes in with like.
Oh God, I've heard that's quite a deep well.
Yeah. But then even like salah timings. So I mean, we can all talk about this here, but there are different salah timings according to different madhahib, and even within the madhahib, there are different opinions in terms of when Fajr and Isha, especially in this country as well, right?
Oh yeah.
So it gets a heated topic sometimes amongst those people who aren't aware of the issue and stuff. But when you actually look into the masala, it's amazing, like where it's coming from and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And when I was talking to my friend about it, my non-Muslim friend who has that maths and stats background, he was just shocked, like, wow, there's all of this that's involved in terms of like your Sharia rulings.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, man. Like, it's not as like, you know, and a lot of things, especially within this country, what I find is so many people, now more Muslims as well, sort of equate Christianity with Islam, whereas really they aren't compatible. I mean, you mentioned this off air, and I want to sort of bring you back to it.
Yeah.
That the Christian population, for majority of its time period, were kept illiterate.
Oh yeah.
For a reason, right?
They couldn't read Latin at all.
Yeah. And they were kept away from it because of the discrepancies that were there, and because they didn't want the people to sort of like further educate themselves.
Yeah.
But Islam was the opposite. You know, the first revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Iqra, read.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's massive emphasis on Muslims to not just learn their deen, but to also go above and beyond and to become masters in other fields as well.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, what can we do now? So like, what can we take as like practical steps? What can we do to help facilitate those people who have maybe like not just gained a better understanding, but now they are considering, they're in that period of they appreciate Islam and conversion. Like, what can we do to help them in their journey?
So this is a difficult one. I mean, it was similar to like the point before I made about how we all need to, you know, brush up on our understanding of Islam. And alhamdulillah, what I will say is the majority, maybe even 80-90% of Muslims I do know, that their like knowledge of the religion compared to, say, the average Joe in a different religion, they're almost like would be a scholar in terms of the difference, because you know, most Muslims, mashallah, you can go up to them and they'll know quite an amount. A lot of them might know, you know, quite a lot of the Quran memorized, even if they're not practicing, they'll still remember it. They might know, you know, the fiqh quite well, you know, because there's so many different bits and bobs you can know about Islam. And it's just sort of brushing up on other bits, so you've got like a well-rounded area to be able to propagate it and make sure you are coming across eloquent. And explaining, the intricacies of religion. And the main one is just being nice, I suppose, isn't it? To people and making them see the camaraderie, the brotherhood of Muslims, which is something I would always notice in high school, and it was something that was lacking from the Christianity aspect. But it's also, don't make it seem too hard to them. Like I go to work and people don't automatically think I'm a Muslim, even though like I've got a beard that these days beards are in. Maybe 20 years ago they weren't, but everyone's got beards like this these days. So you don't necessarily think, oh, Muslim. A couple of people think I'm Jewish sometimes because of the curly bit.
Yeah.
But so actually, my dad even said once, like someone said to him, "Oh, your son's a Muslim." And he went, "Yeah," and what did he do? Is it all different? They're exactly the same as they were before. Other than they've both got beards and they pray. Tell you the only difference: they don't eat pork, they don't drink alcohol. That's the only difference, and that's all it has to be to the people out there. When you're bringing them into religion, first and foremost is you just it's tawheed, isn't it? It's telling them just about the oneness of God and how simple that is. And the rest follows suit. And once you've got that across, the simplicity of it, the rest, as I said, should just follow quite easily. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Alhamdulillah, I think we've had a really good chat here, Isa.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to mention? I don't know. I just want to open it to you in case there is something that you felt that we might have missed.
I'd just say, alhamdulillah, I think we're in a good position in this country at the moment. I think if most Muslims could pick any, and they knew about the different countries, if you could pick any country to live in the West, it's going to be the UK. Alhamdulillah, we don't have any. Yeah, there are, obviously there's always going to be like elements of racism and stuff like that. And again, that's not something I get because obviously I'm white. But we only have to look at France at the moment. We have to look at the amount of Muslims who have deviated away from Islam in America. Germany, maybe not too bad. But, generally the UK, mashallah, is a good place to live in. There's many cities here which, the Muslim population, like here where we are now in Blackburn, it's very high Muslim population. Where I work and live in Manchester, again, a lot of Muslims, these places, where prayer rooms are, built into the buildings, and any hospital you go into, there's prayer rooms and, there's prayer mats there. And so we're in a good position. We don't need to be scared of being Muslims anymore. 9/11's gone, we're 20 years on, it's a new generation. Don't be scared of to wear the hijab or to grow a beard or to wear, Islamic clothing. People know that Muslims wear this clothing now. You don't have to be scared. Talk about your religion. Talk about Sharia. Sharia shouldn't be this, Sharia law, you're going to chop off the hand of someone who takes a sweet from a shop. That's not Sharia law. No, learn about Sharia law properly, and then be able to have these conversations with people. Attack their ideologies. Don't just defend. Attack. So just it's all about just being proud of being a Muslim and putting that across and making people realize, wow, actually that makes sense. I would get into debates a lot in my last job with people, with one guy specifically about Sharia law, and we were talking about the ruling of like chopping off the hands of thieves. And when I explained it properly to loads of, they were all just there with the popcorn just listening to us argue. And when I explained it properly, we had a little like a voting system, on what would you do? Someone's come to your house, they've damaged your property, they've stole, I don't know, like £4,000 worth of jewellery or something, and they've got off, and they didn't need to steal your money to survive. They've just done it because they want it, because they don't want to get a job or anything, and what would you want to do to them? And I'd want to kill them. So how about chopping a hand off? Now they're forever known as someone who was a thief. And and like there was like 6 of us there, and all of them agreed with me that that's a suitable punishment. And that was just like 10 minutes of a conversation. So you take Sharia at large, or the religion at large, and you can win people over academically. And I think this day and age, academically is what a lot of people aim for. The age of we're past the age of enlightenment where people have left Christianity because it doesn't make sense. Islam does make sense, but people will just, like what you said, they think Christianity and Islam are synonymous with each other. They're not. Islam's far beyond Christianity. It's not. Islam isn't a religion. It's an everything. Do you know what I mean? It's a guide to health, to nutrition, to mental stability, to religion, a way of life. The way you work, political aspects like what we've discussed. So just be proud of being a Muslim and propagate it, and don't be scared anymore. You don't need to be scared anymore. I think we're past the point now where, are we even a minority? When this census comes out soon, it's going to say there's 5 million of us. That's nearly 10% of the country is Muslim, and a lot of rural areas are non-Muslim. So the inner cities, like, how many Muslims live in London? Millions. Birmingham, Leicester, Blackburn, where we are, even Manchester, hundreds of thousands. We don't need to be scared, and we just need to just propagate and go on the attack if we need to. Not in an aggressive way or a physical way, just in an intellectual, academic way.
Oh, I think it's a fantastic point that you've ended on here. This thing about being proud about your religion and stuff, and we're not, like you said, we're not saying go attack in terms of like physical or anything. We're talking about on an intellectual level. I think what you've mentioned here about like the hands chopping off and things like that, there's definitely an element that we need to learn what the Sharia is actually saying about this. But like definitely go on the attack in terms of like
what doesn't help though, again going back to media, you watch a famous movie like Aladdin. Princess Jasmine, she takes an apple for an orphan, and then that big security guard tries to chop her hand off straight away. It's like, that's what they think Sharia is, and you can't really blame them because that's what they've seen from media. So again, that's why, like what you said, we need to brush up and know the actual rulings so that we can then explain it and help people get on board.
But this is like they're actually one of the episodes I wanted to do in the future in terms of talking about like prison and the current punishment system in this country. So for example, like if somebody is sentenced and they are found guilty of rape, right? What's a sentence for somebody who is a rapist or somebody who is convicted of being a paedophile, right? Like, let's be honest, like we've heard about, and I don't want to get into the stats here as yet because I've not done my full research at the moment, but I definitely know that whatever it is at the moment is not sufficient for what it should be in my eyes.
Not even about that, it doesn't work. They'll come back out and they'll reoffend.
So there definitely needs to be an element in terms of like discussing where we need to go in terms of making our societies much more cleaner and removing these kind of things that take place. But I think it's been a fantastic chat with you, Isa.
Likewise.
I think like this is definitely an episode that had to be like an opener with you, unfortunately, right? But it would be really good to inshallah have you on to discuss other topics in the future as well.
I'm just down the road.
Kind of. Well, you're a HGV driver, so
I can handle it.
But Jazakallah khair for listening. I hope that you've enjoyed the episode. We'll leave link to Isa's social media in the description below. So if anybody does want to contact him about anything, then feel free to do so. Isa, whenever somebody asks you what your conversion story was, I
could just link this YouTube now.
So that'll be really handy for you now as well,
and you.
But if there's like any particular topics or anything else that you think that would be really good for Isa to discuss in the future, I'm not promising anything, but if there's something in particular that you would like to discuss or a question that you have that can even maybe be answered virtually as well, then feel free to leave that in the comments. Jazakallah khair for listening, and inshallah we'll see you in the next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.